Welcome to Political Trade Secrets, an inside look at campaigns and politics, where we pull back the curtain, look under the hood, and investigate all aspects of politics and how elections are won. Now, here's your host, Dustin Olson.
And welcome to Political Trade Secrets. I'm your host, Dustin Olson. Welcome to everybody who's streaming in from across the internet. We are live streaming on 12 different platforms, whether you're on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, wherever you're at. Thank you for joining us today. We know you can spend your time doing many different things, but you're joining us for this amazing conversation on using conversational texting for fundraising. And we're going to be joined by James Martin of Rally Corp. And we're going to talk to him, get his experience, his expertise on how to use texting for fundraising, which I know everybody out there is very interesting, because whenever we want to talk about fundraising, we have a lot of people who are very interested in talking about this topic. But before we bring him in, I'd like to bring in my co-host, compadre, and America's sweetheart, Sean Bartley. Sean, how you doing today?
Good morning. I'm doing well. Good to be with you. I think it's going to be a great show today. Really looking forward to the topic.
Yes, well, I'm looking forward to it as well. This is really, I think, the next wave in campaigns. You know, there's campaigns have been taking this on as a new tactic. We had it mostly in voter contact this last election cycle, but I think fundraising is really where candidates and campaigns, organizations can use this in the coming election cycles. Yeah,
well, and I think really the idea that we're going to talk about today, this idea of conversational texting, I think is really the next level here. I think people, I'm sure, got plenty of text telling them that they needed to give and had all those things in it. But really being able to connect with folks, I think, is really going to be the next step here. And I think it's something that is naturally missing in the marketplace overall after a year plus of being disconnected with people. Mm-hmm. So
absolutely. And in the same vein, we have, James has actually inspired us to use texting for Political Trade Secrets. So you can text me at 202-918-3345 to join our texting community. That way you can stay in touch. We just sent out a text a moment ago. Some of you are joining us because you got the link to the show and you're watching on politicaltradesecrets.com or you're watching YouTube. Thank you very much for joining us today. But you can join our community by texting 202-918-3345. And, this is something that we can learn from as well. We'll get James's ideas on how we can actually implement texting conversationally to make a difference for Political Trade Secrets and, of course, for our candidates as well. And also, if you are interested in becoming a Political Trade Secrets insider, you can go to politicaltradesecrets.com, sign up, get exclusive stuff. We send out books, we send out, different free resources that we want to support you with as you're thinking about running for office. So please do go to politicaltradesecrets.com, sign up today. We really do appreciate it. And Sean, would you mind telling people how else they can be involved?
Absolutely. Look, are you thinking about running for office, or you want to talk about what it takes to be a powerful political leader in your neck of the woods, your community, state, the country, or even the world? Reach out to us at Olson Strategies. It's OLSON strategies.com. You can email me, Sean, SEAN, at olsonstrategies.com, or Dustin at olsonstrategies.com. They really are the conversations we love to have and get you started on that journey to really being out there in the world, making a difference for your community. So reach out to us today. And then we're also proud to be sponsored by Grassfire. What do? Canvassing, petitioning, live calling. It's really all the one-on-one, human-to-human interaction that a campaign can have with voters. Make it count. You have one shot at a first impression. Make it count with Grassfire, www.grassfire.us. They also fuel 10centtexting.com. This is the way that you can connect with political texting through 10-cent texting. It's your way to have an image, GIF, short video right there in the body of that text message. And get the word out to the voters who need to hear from you most. It's 10centtexting.com. Oh, Can't hear you.
Excellent. Thank you very much and appreciate that. And then, of course, we always want to let people know if you'd like to join the Share Force, make a difference, reignite American patriotism, you can join us with the Share Force.
Yeah.
So please join us at politicaltradesecrets.com. And thank you to everybody who's already out there sharing. I see already have a comment there that you've shared the episode. It looks like I think we have quite a few already shares out there on Facebook anyhow, and I'm sure on the other platforms. So thank you to everybody who is sharing the program. It's actually just as simple as that to join the Share Force, our digital squadron out there making a difference on the internet. You can just share the program, and we really do appreciate that. It really does make a difference because who knows, there might be that person out there, that citizen of our country who is wanting to step up to be a political leader for their community, for their state, and for our country. And you sharing this video may inspire them to take on that leadership and to make a difference in their community. So thank you for doing that. Who knows who you might inspire with that. So with that, Sean, I'm really excited to talk about fundraising today.
Me too. I think this is really a great cross section of what's going on in the world today, nonprofits in particular, and I do see that this is really a growth opportunity for campaigns that really get out there and really use this properly to make a difference for their campaign. So I think the really being able to be relational and conversational in other ways than how we've done it before, and actually have a connection is going to be so critical. So I'm really looking forward to the conversation we're going to have.
And I think what we're going to learn today also will make a difference for the voter contact and everything else that campaigns can do. A lot of what I've seen from James, his advice and his insights really apply to all marketing. And whether if even, I think you can learn things for your direct mail, everything else. I think it'll be great for us to incorporate that. So who is James Martin? Well, he's the CEO and founder of Rally Corp. He is the growth strategist, a trusted coaching professional, a fractional executive. We'll find out what that is, a serial entrepreneur. And he works with his clients to implement systems and processes to scale marketing, sales, and operations, and focus on critical systems and processes that drive revenue and profit. And that's a big thing that we're about here, is that campaigns implement systems. So we're going to also probably talk to him about automation and workflows, something that a lot of campaigns really don't do and could really make a difference for them. So outside of work, James is a husband, a father of 3, and a hiking addict. So we will get to talk about all of that. With that, we are going to move on with the show. James Martin, welcome to the program. How are you doing today?
Just fine, Dustin. Thanks for having me. Hey, Sean, good to see you again.
Good morning. Glad to have you on. We're looking forward to this conversation. So
well, I think there's a lot of campaigns out there that are really going to enjoy this conversation. A lot of people are always looking for more ways to be able to raise money. And this is by far, in the last election cycle, we really saw that texting actually really starts conversations with people. We were kind of surprised by that as we've been implementing it over time. Direct mail doesn't do that. TV commercials don't do that, but texting does. So how did you actually come about? You say you're a serial entrepreneur. How did you come about the idea of developing Rally Corp? Is it Rally Corp or Rally Corp? I think I said it both ways.
You can call it, Rally Corp. It all works.
All right, perfect. Yeah. So how did you come about with that idea, and like where did it come from, and how long have you been doing it? And just tell us the story.
Yeah, it does. So I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm a serial entrepreneur. So I've started a number of companies. The last company we built up and sold back in 2015 focused on websites. We had a content management system. If you're familiar with like a WordPress, it was a CMS specific to the cause sector. We had everything from faith-based organizations to some of the largest nonprofits, charities, and causes. So we niched in early on and built out a system that helps you, drive conversions on your website. When we sold that business, we made the Inc. 5000, 12th fastest growing company here in San Diego. So we're quite proud of that. Had a great team. But when we sold that business, I set out to, with some of the members of the same team, actually build a little bit more of a funnel, some funnel conversion to solve for some of the stickiness that we were feeling. So just moving to the next layer of the workflow, if you would.
Yeah, well, that's a great background, and a lot of people who watch our program are also very much involved in faith-based organizations, and I can imagine the tools that your tool is actually not specifically just for campaigns. We're interested in it for that perspective. However, you're working with, what are the kind of organizations that you're working with at Rally Corp?
Yeah, so we have Salvation Army. We've worked with Livestrong. We have several YMCA's, really organizations of all sizes, right down to the smaller grassroots regional nonprofits. Really anybody that has a challenge with converting eyeballs to action, and then taking that action in a sustainable, ongoing way. That could be members, donors, volunteers.
Yeah, well, I really look at this as an opportunity for campaigns, but talk a little bit about some of those challenges that some of your clients had that really had you create this, like what were they seeing that said, hey, this is the answer.
Yeah, that's a great question, Sean. There's a lot of opportunities for nonprofits and charities, out there. So the Google Ad Grant, for example, gives you $10,000 a month in grants if you apply and get approved to drive website traffic. So what we found is that several, even larger causes, were driving 200,000-300,000 people a month to their website. They just weren't converting that traffic. And if they did convert the traffic, they converted them to email. And with emails pickup rates post transaction, it's very difficult to get those people back again. And they're just, your newsletter lands in the same folder as Bed Bath and Beyond. So it's kind of hard to get their attention. So usually it's organizations that have a communications or marketing team, or maybe they're founder led, but they have some marketing systems in place. They're just really struggling with moving the conversation forward.
Do you find that when it comes to nonprofits and whatnot, fundraising organizations, are they using workflows? Are they using automation? Is that something that they're actively doing, or is this a whole new frontier for them? Because in campaigns, honestly, unless you're looking at Donald Trump's campaigns, really there's very few campaigns actually use those kind of tools.
Well, the big ones certainly are, and I would argue that's why they're big. Because it takes systems and processes to drive, consistent momentum. And we're really about growth stacking, taking what's working and building from there, and not necessarily hacking. We don't try a lot. We try to get very specific. And when I looked at various communication strategies, obviously it's an omni-channel or multi-channel, email, social. There's not a one size fits all. And texting certainly isn't a magic bullet. But what we found is that a well-executed plan that's well documented in more of a relational, values-based, conversational tone, really fit the overall communication strategy of our clients. So that's a great question, Dustin. I wish more of them were more systematic, and that's maybe where my fractional work comes in.
So tell us what that means, because that's not a term that's used in political campaigns too much.
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's really a term that we use when we don't want to say the word consultant. Or part-time. So typically what I do in my fractional work, and here's the big idea behind every visionary is a good integrator, right? And if you really want to take your organization to the next level, every dreamer needs an execution person if they're not that person. And sometimes it's a different skill set. So my background as a chief operating officer, coming up through sales and marketing, and working in more of an execution environment. We're just, taking a vision and making it come alive, and building systems around that to support that, was my background. So when I sold the last company, Dustin, I had a little bit of a identity crisis. Like, who am I? I just sold off my team. It was a great feeling, but you can, only spend so much time between jobs. So I sat out to help a few friends and some clients with building systems in the back end, but fractional at the end of the day just means I'm not full-time in a company. My job is to work myself out of a job and to build systems in my place and coach and mentor team members to step in and do the day-to-day delivery of value.
Very cool.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's really in your bio. What really struck at me is really all the different ways that you've been in and around building companies, and I would say looking for the ways that particular systems and processes make the difference. When you look at texting, is that something that you saw was missing in the marketplace? Was like, hey, some sort of system around this?
Sean, it's so funny. I actually went kicking and screaming against text messages because I didn't really want to do texting initially. When we formed our team, I'm a big believer in people and then process and then product. So we actually had our team assembled for a year where we were working on the challenge of creating, funnel conversion tools, stickiness, before we actually landed on texting. We had dabbled with texting some, and we had used just about every texting tool on the market. And what we had found is that a lot of them, most of them, none of them really had any concept of AI or natural language processing where we could at large scale give tremendous insights into what was happening with the messages. And very few of them really had a conversational feel. You could send a message out, but you really couldn't engage in conversation, at least not at massive scale. So at the end of the day, when we looked at the different mediums that we could use, texting just surfaced as the most obvious answer. And so we went into texting really out of just clarity that it is by far the most effective channel for communications. And we felt like the tools on the market just really weren't cutting it when it comes to conversation with a bit of AI to ensure that we're doing it well and doing it right at massive scale.
It definitely simplifies the communication. Everybody knows exactly where their text messaging is on their phone, and it gets to them. In a moment, I'd like to get a sense of what relational means, what that looks like for campaigns. Sure. So, but real quick, if you are watching, wherever you're watching, you can post a comment, question. You can join the conversation. I already see Women Reigniting American Patriotism says, 100 shares already in under 10 minutes. I love having texting for fundraising and campaigns. That's pretty awesome. Well, thank you for keeping track of that, by the way. And Pat says, I think it's great if you don't abuse it. Well, that's, I think, a big thing that you would agree with. You want to do it in a way that's relational. And then a couple good mornings. Well, thank you for all the nice comments. And what does that look like? What does it look like to have a relational conversation with people? What does it, what are the different components? And as Pat was asking about, it's great if you don't abuse it. How do you not abuse it?
Yeah, couldn't agree more. In fact, we'll boot you off the platform if you abuse it, and we can tell if you are. So we take that very, very serious. At the end of the day, what we wanted to do was create the lowest barrier and the least friction to connect with folks through texting. So we do a lot of, we've been on HBO with a special, we have ABC, NPR, different radio spots, podcasts, even like this here. And the simplest way to get people to text in is just say, hey, text James to 24365. That's 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. That's the phone number, 24365. And then just put James in and hit send. And then in my case, you'll get my business card or a V card, add me to your phone. But that could have very easily been a video or a graphic or something like that we can deliver to the texter. Now, that is an easy way to get someone to take some action. Now, the relationship and conversation comes in when Rally allows us to chat two-way over that short code, which is fairly unique. I don't know if you've gotten a text message from a dentist at some point about, being late, having an appointment coming up. And if you're running late, if you reply to that message, most people don't monitor that channel. It's just a one-way push to let you know of an appointment. Or you might get a text message from your credit card company about, something, and you can reply with a 1, 2, or 3. But if you reply with anything other than that, it's not conversational. So with Rally's 24365, we've enabled bidirectional chat. And then we, of course, move the conversation to a dedicated toll-free number that can support both voice and and conversation over the phone if that's kind of where the conversation needs to go.
Yeah. So you really pointed to something there, that some of these, and we actually had a question from our text line, which said, in fundraising in particular, it's that personal touch that helps raise large sums of money. Isn't texting an impersonal way to approach big donors? And it sounds like one of the ways that you can engage folks, regardless of where they are or might be, is that you also have a place where it can move to a phoning component or a call pretty easily. So, how seamless is that?
Yeah, it's great. We've made it as seamless as you can get. You text in 24365. You get, for example, a donation link. We drop you on a donation system. And Rally, it's important to note, we don't provide any fundraising tools ourselves. We integrate with every other tool out there, which we felt was important because the last thing we wanted to do is add another donation system to the mix. To keep things personal at scale, you really need to have just one master record of who the donor is or who the supporter is. And connect with them or her there. Now, so you text in 24365, you land on the donation page of your choosing, provided it's mobile friendly, of course. You complete that transaction, and then we can send a thank you through the 24365, or better yet, move it to a regular phone number. And then our team is working on being able to drop voicemails at massive scale as well, so you can leave thank you follow-ups. Or you can just use a dialer and start calling. And we integrate, of course, with several different dialers. And but thank you telephone calls and thank you messages, even simple thank you texts, or even a thank you card or a note, goes a long ways to improving overall donor retention and bringing them back again. And a big initiative at Rally is reoccurring gifts. We want to see people donate time and time again. And that's really, I think, what moves the needle on these campaigns is not just the one-time donation, but the multiple gifts over time.
Well, that's any fundraising for political campaigns. It's the same thing. It's one of the most important things for a campaign to do is to thank their donors immediately. That way, because they're the ones who are going to be most likely to give again. And it's amazing for us. We run into so many candidates who don't want to ask somebody who's already given to give again. And yet those are the people who are the most committed. And to make sure that we are not like a dentist's office, for those of you who are on our, who do text with us, we can get your questions here. And we have a question from someone. So as a fundraiser, I know it takes that person to that personal touch to raise large sums of money. Isn't texting an impersonal way to approach big donors? Can you explain how you break through that barrier with texting? So so you have an online course that you actually talk about, how to use texting for fundraising, which I think I assume you'll have a way to recommend people check that out. But you actually address this on how, the average donation that comes through text, and then also how to maybe integrate this with larger donors.
Yeah, that's a great question, actually. And, certainly I think one of the first things we do in developing a system, particularly on my coaching side, is to create really donor profiles and segment your donors well. And so it's not a one size fits all strategy for all donors. That's a great question that indicates, a lot of thoughtfulness there. But certainly one would also say that most of your major donors at one time were not major donors. So they were one-time donors. A lot of us donate one time to a cause and see how it feels and what the process is like. And we're certainly not going to become major donors if there's not some kind of a thank you or personalized message. So I would not advocate that we blast text messages to your major donors a thank you. But what I would say is that chances are our major donors do text. We all do. And so if you were to text from the founder or the candidate, which has been highly effective, and say, hey, James, I really appreciate you and Tracy's gift to my election. I'd love just to get 5 minutes on the phone with you to hear your concerns. And what a great way to set up that call, to actually text them from the phone number that we'll be placing the call on, right? So there's different strategies depending on the size and scale and the personal touch. We've seen videos delivered successfully through a link. where they can click on it and watch a video that's been somewhat personalized. So there's different ways to do it. But I wouldn't start with texting as a thank you for major donors. It would be a follow-on channel to something I'm already doing as one more means of potentially driving people to that channel with class.
Now you make the point though that texting before you call can be very helpful because they actually know that it's you, and that's one of the reasons why you use your V card, right? Is one of the things that you want to do.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's exactly right. Your pickup rates on telephone calls, thank you calls, even to major donors, are significantly higher if you text ahead of time. So if you just text a few minutes beforehand, and look, with the ability to throttle the messages like what Rally can do, we can send 1,000 messages, but do more of a peer-to-peer where you can send 5 at a time. You get 2 people to take up, to agree to a call, then you make the call, and then you send 5 more, so you can throttle that to handle the scale. It doesn't have to be done all at once.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's great. And what I'm really hearing is something that we talk about a lot in our campaigns, which is integrating. So there's really an integration between your fundraising calls and your texting, and it all works together. And it's not like, okay, this is the thing that's going to go do it. And we see that a lot in campaigns. People say, well, hey, we sent out the fundraising letters, so fundraising that's taken care of. Well, you're depending on a lot out there. You're depending on somebody to get the mail, open it, read it, write a check, put the check back in the envelope, send it back, and on your timetable, not on their timetable.
Exactly.
So, but really being able to use this idea of texting as part of the overall strategy and a way to reach out to people, particularly with recurring gifts. So how have you seen texting be able to really ramp up the recurring gifts?
Yeah, that's an excellent point. At the end of the day, it's all about recurring. So I think staying top of mind with your donors is critical. So friendly, personalized, conversational text messages sent at massive scale is a great way to do that. So it really just comes down to sending messages on a regular basis. And again, people want to know what they're signing up for. So the comment earlier about doing it with class and make sure you don't abuse it. I've seen, and it really just depends on the political issues at hand and the candidate's platform, if you would. But the candidates that integrate their messaging to their platform and then make themselves available to have conversations around that, knowing that they can also segment that inbound traffic based on sentiment. So frankly, if you're getting a lot of text messages that are not favorable, then just filter for those and focus on the positive ones, or ask open-ended questions, and then how people respond using the sentiment tool. We can tell you, hey, these 10 messages were favorable, these 10 were not. So you can spend your time on the right conversations, either turning people's attention to a matter or focus on the conversation. So the reoccurring gift at the end of the day, Sean, just comes down to my ability to connect in a repeatable fashion and in a relational way.
So on that, for a couple of questions that came out of that is, what is regular? And it's going to probably depend on the kind of industry you might be in or the kind of nonprofit. I'm guessing political campaigns is something we don't really know yet because not a lot of campaigns are using it yet. But for your experience, what is regular?
Yeah, it really does depend on the cause or movement or the candidate's kind of tone. So it really does, as you said, it depends quite a bit on the organization or the individual. Now, I'll also say it depends on the audience, and there's really no way to know that other than the A/B test, where you try it one way and then you try it another. As long as you're measuring the results, which Rally, we're really big on measuring the throughput. But if you're measuring and you're modifying and you're responding to those, then given time, you can come to find what works best for your message and your audience.
Yeah. So thinking about this idea, kind of another way here. What is really the crux of what people need to get that makes the difference in the texting we're talking about, which is more of this conversational versus the one way? Like, what are a couple of the components that really make that pop for the people on the other end?
Yeah, there's certain things that you could do around the message itself, being very conversational, personalized if you can. We can actually prompt for their name and then store that information in the database on our end, and of course that can be exported into other under system, of course. But the more you can pack the record, so to speak, of the people you're texting with, the name, even the spouse's name, like the more you can do there, the better. And chances are, if you have, at least from the fundraising angle, the donor's information, as much as you can pull and incorporate in your messaging, the better, to make that message land, because we can usually tell pretty quick if the message is canned or not. And I don't think it's necessarily that people have a problem with canned messages. They just don't want insensitive messages that are untimely and irrelevant. So we certainly want to just consider all these factors. And that's why we do a lot of communication strategy work with our clients as well. And the reason we call them clients and not customers, because we really see this as you can certainly just get the platform and kind of do it yourself. But really, to succeed, it takes the training, it takes the strategy, and then we even offer the managed services if you want help managing the actual influx of messaging. So, I think with every client, it comes down to what data do you have? How do we segment that data? And then how do we build a campaign? Working very closely, of course, with the consultants and the political advisors, because they have the finger on the pulse of what needs to happen. We just provide the medium to deliver the message.
So in the conversational, the writing of it, a lot of the messaging that happens in campaigns and politics is very much beat people over the head. But actually, like, you're texting a friend, and you might reference things in their life, like you're mentioning, if you can get that information. And so that stuff just gets populated into the text message. That's what you're suggesting.
Absolutely, yeah. And Dustin, I saw an example that you did with the video right inside the text, and I shared that with my team. That's a fantastic idea. So that's an example of Rally learning as well from our clients to say, hey, we need to incorporate rich media. We need to make sure we're delivering gifts that transition smoothly, that don't have a big payload on the message itself. So those are things that we can do to improve the read rates. But text messages already have a phenomenal read rate. What we're looking to do is improve the click-through. And then once we improve the click-through, we would then of course dial in on the conversion to actually the first gift. And then just as important, of course, down the road is a re-gift or a reoccurring donation.
So how important is, like, actually asking the person on the other end their opinion or to give some feedback? How important is that in this process?
No. Yeah, I love that, and I always smile because people are afraid to ask for feedback. But if you want a quick way to segment your list and identify how you want to message which audience or which group within your audience, questions are a great way to do that. And questions by their nature have more of a conversational tone because they begin the conversation, and with an AI powered or AI enhanced tool, it becomes easier and easier to sort that data and get to it in a meaningful way. So I'm a big fan of asking questions. I think in a text message with a question mark or even an emoji, if that's on brand, those are just simple ways to get folks to say, hey, this must be a person. And again, these are not coming from short codes. They're coming from a toll-free number in most cases. So yeah, it's a great question, but good way to segment the list for sure.
Well,
that's a good. Go ahead, Sean.
I was just going to say, you make a great point about emojis and including some of that stuff in there. I mean, how important is it that it look and feel like a text that you would get from somebody that you know?
Yeah, very important. And one of the first things I do when I get a text, and I sign up for all of them because I like to get them all. I'm in the business, so I appreciate the ideas I get from them. But one of the first things I do is actually try to make a call. I just try to connect the phone call. And if it rings like most systems that I've tried, it actually just makes a fast busy, and it's clearly a robot system. So being able to connect with someone on the other end is it's huge.
Yeah, that's been a big challenge, I think, in politics in the last 2 years. Really, in the last 2 years is when texting's become ubiquitous in campaigns. But people complain because it's always, if you text back, it goes into a black hole. and
Mhm.
there's really no way to connect with anybody if you call it. Who knows
Yeah.
what it's going to do? I know with instanttexting.com that we use for voter contact, that is that those campaigns make sure that it actually goes to either the campaign manager or
Important.
sometimes the candidate. So there's a real person, and people are flabbergasted when they reply back to maybe a "get out the vote" text, and a real person responds. And there was one campaign in the fall where people started responding back saying, "Is this a real person?" And they raised $20,000 on a "get out the vote" text,
Smart.
which is crazy. I mean, it's all because there's a real person at the other end. This is a good time to. You've mentioned the sentiment tool. You've talked about the analysis, and Pat asked the question, "What's your sentiment tool? Is it just reading every text?"
hmm Yeah, great. So, there's some pretty advanced capabilities now with some of the same technology that powers Alexa, the little Amazon talking device that we have in our
Hmm.
homes. So, there's a lot of great technology out there, and we've deployed much of that in what we're doing. But yeah, it's simply put, it does read the text messages, and it's just scoring the text message friendly or not friendly or favorable, not favorable. And then, of course, we can take that a step further with some of our deeper analytics that we're working on. But right now, we just simply score the message as positive or negative in tone, and then we can filter for those. And to your point, Dustin, what a great way to respond to folks that have been disrupted or upset. If I've seen campaigns respond to an emoji of the middle finger with a "Hey, we're so sorry for the trouble, we're taking off our list," and people most of the time will respond back, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know there was a person there." They thought they were cussing out a robot, and when they
Hmm.
realize there's a human there, most of us try to avoid interpersonal aggression. So it does change the tone actually
Hmm.
quite successfully. But you can't respond the next day with a sorry. You really need to do it fairly timely. So the fact that we can heighten those and bring those to the top of your list so you work there first is pretty important.
And it
Yeah.
also is important for compliance as well, right? Because
Oh yeah.
that's a whole nother thing. And this is something we keep an eye on is the FCC at any point could have a big impact on this tool even being able to be used, and we need to follow the rules. So tell us how that works with the sentiment analysis.
Yeah, that's an absolutely great point. I think that at the end of the day, as long as we treat people with, the respect and dignity they deserve and do unto others as we'd have them do unto us. At the end of the day, we have voters and we have donors that have heads they like to think, they have hearts they obviously feel. There's an emotional pact, and then they have hands they do, right? So the head, heart, and hands is an analogy I often take clients through to think about how do we want our donors to think, what do we want them to feel, and what do we want them to do. Now, there is of course, some compliance that we just have to get right, and that is automatic opt-outs. If they choose to opt out, messaging that needs to be included in the messaging. So we certainly have those things built in any system. I would quite frankly be foolish not to do that, and those are things that we need to look at. But who we're speaking to and the posture we take in those conversations goes a long way to mitigate that risk if we're smart about it. Now, I wouldn't blast hundreds of thousands of people, without some consideration for how we're going to handle the influx of those messages. And that's where our
Mhm.
managed service team comes in. We actually have managed those messages for our clients in some cases. But sending 1,000 messages, seeing what worked, sending 2,000 more, seeing what works. If we have time, which now we have time, we won't have time in much time, but
Mhm.
if you can start a strategy early on and build that into your learning organization where you're simply just seeing what works and what doesn't, we can dial it in so that when we go to turn it on in the 11th hour, it's ramped up and it's doing quite well.
Well, it is something that's huge, really, for keeping voters happy in particular, because sometimes you get stopped with 7 exclamation points after it, and what people don't get is right now that doesn't opt you out unless
Yeah,
somebody sees it and then goes and opts you out because
yeah,
the message is very clear. It's stop. That's what you're supposed to send, not
yeah.
stop with a bunch of other stuff. Um, it's remarkable there. But I do have a question. What threats are facing those that are using texting? Could it be carriers, governmental entities? What are the threats to this tactic right now?
Yeah, the biggest threat that we have is people are just begin to ignore it because it's just
Mhm.
not, it's just not done well. So many campaigns have just jumped on the bandwagon and blast people, and it runs the risk of being another noisy channel. People, frankly, disconnect. Now, I don't know. You two would probably know better than I do, but I'm not convinced there's a case out there where somebody changed party lines because they got a text message and they were that annoyed if they were that volatile to begin with. I don't think we really run the risk of losing voters to another candidate, another party per se. But I think the tone and the flavor, so to speak, of the candidates and the nonprofits we work with really need to be conversational, relational, down to earth. Of course, the technology is there that we can handle that at scale, and there's support that we can build around the campaign to do that. But the biggest risk that we have is the other folks, blasting messages, and then the regulators take note of that because there's just a lot of
Mhm.
complaints, and I don't like it, right? And I signed up for them.
Yeah.
So the more it feels consistent, and I get a sense that hey, this candidate's a real person, or at least they're supported by real people, and I'm reasonable in that, and my voice is heard. People just want to be heard. And if you give them a way to do that, and that's why we call it Rally Corp, right? Well, I mean, we're all about driving rally. Rally is an amazing intersection that happens between your audience's wishes and wants and your organization's ability to deliver on that. And the communication is a critical part of making that happen, of course.
That's excellent. And we're kind of talking about two different realms with the fundraising, or if you have like volunteers, you have like your community that you've built up around you, and
Yeah.
you're communicating with them, and then what we have to deal with in campaigns and probably with prospecting. I'd be interested in how people maybe use texting for prospecting for donors, and if that's even a thing. But for a get out the vote text, you're sending it to potentially half of the population that you have cell phones for. And what
Mhm.
we've experienced, at least so far, is that you do want to be respectful and you really want to be of service. If you're
Mhm.
providing something that's really informationally valid or helpful to people, they really do appreciate it. Like right now, we're working with local governments and others who want to communicate to their community how they can actually, in their specific community, go about registering themselves to be able to get the vaccine and to
Yeah.
actually support people. And this is something that's useful to folks. And if you get something useful, even if it's in a large broadcast text, people are going to actually appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, at the end of the day, we got to remember these are people that are receiving our messages, and they have their own lives, and they're probably more consumed with themselves than they are with us, of course, right? So that can carry something of value for them in the message itself, be it location of a voting poll. I know that was a big help for my wife and I when we first moved to San Diego. We didn't know where to go. California's a little different than Texas, so
Hmm.
and we were really concerned with okay, what are the candidates actually? What's the difference between this mayor candidate and the next one? And so getting that types of information in a timely way, knowing that there was an information number I could call, moving them into other channels of communication, certainly. Um, and I think a good strategy, we call it donor acquisition or audience acquisition, but 24365 is a great mechanism. On all of your signage, we have, of course, QR codes and different things like that we can use that trigger that. But in your mailers, in your handouts, I have it on a license plate frame. It's kind of cheesy, but I wanted to see if
That's
anybody
awesome.
ever used it.
Mm.
But I have my 24365 and a word. Um, so just really it's embedding it everywhere and anywhere so that you're constantly building that opt-in. Because to your point, Sean, earlier, at some point they're going to come out and say, look, you can only text people that you can document and that you have recently opted in. So if you're not using an inbound strategy to build those lists, you're really going to be in a world of hurt when they say, hey, you can't send cold unrequested texts anymore. And that's just a matter of time, I believe.
Yeah. Well, that Alex has a question. How can those of us preparing to run for office leverage our existing contacts for text fundraising? And what you're suggesting is that may be something that isn't doable in the future, or is it? If you have it on your cell phone, these are people that you have a relationship with. Like, what's your advice here?
Well, the stronger the relationship and bond, the better, right? So if you have relationships with them, absolutely. So the short answer is build relationships with all your current supporters and keep that relationship, indefinitely, right? Continue to build that. All relationships atrophy over time, and it takes the muscle of building that. So as long as you're doing that, I think it's a great source. Most folks, of course, expect to hear from a candidate or a nonprofit that they've supported in the past. They probably are offended if they don't. So, reaching out now to say, hey, I'm considering office, I'm running for office, and this is my platform. Here's the change I want to see. Or can I count on you early in the conversation? And then move it into a phone number or a platform where you can share that burden, because it becomes, if you're candidating as you should be, at some point it's too much for one person to manage on their one phone. You really need to be able to hand it off to a team of volunteers or a team of staff and say, hey, help me manage this inbox. And for me, I have a document I wrote up that says, here's the things that you can say, here's my tone, here's what's acceptable. Just like I have a whole lexicon of things that are not acceptable that I don't want you saying on my behalf. So having that well documented just leads again to the conversation and process, so that anybody can step in and manage that.
That's excellent advice in general for a campaign to have a messaging document like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And there's certain emojis that I'm, if you get it, it's not for me, because I'm that guy. And others that, okay, James, I could see James using this. So I put some thought into that document. It's just a Google document. It's a couple of pages, but like, here's the tone, here's the goal, here's who I am, here's my bio, here's how I answer this question. So really anybody can step in at that point and manage the campaign, including an external team.
Well, Dustin mentioned it earlier, and I was checking out a lot of the materials on your website, rallycorp.com. It was great. I want to get into this idea of acquire, engage, and retain.
Yeah.
In particular, I think that's really a great way to look at this. But tell us how critical that is, how vital that is.
Yeah, list building, building a vibrant list, I think we call it. It's one of the headlines on our website even. Like, we just want to build passionate supporters, and we want to keep those folks on the ready. Whether you're, building financial support, get out the vote support, communal support, but the more you can have people text in and ask a simple question or a series of questions, we call them text surveys. So, if you have somebody texting in about a rent control issue or challenge or something on the docket coming up that you want to have people address, have them text in, ask a couple, 3 questions on that, see how they respond, segment those people. But acquiring for me really is a multi-pronged, multifaceted approach of as much as you can get people to opt in, email, text, social, to have permission to hear from you again. And then engage them over time, build that relationship, find out what works and doesn't, and continue to stay top of mind. I mean, I've seen statistics about how many ads we see every day for our time and attention. So if we're going to compete with these brands, we need to look at what they're doing to stay engaged and top of mind. And we certainly can't spend our way to those positions, but we can, through thoughtful, meaningful, relational conversation, keep the conversation moving for when the time for when the time comes. And then the recurring or retention is just a natural fallout of that. If you're building a vibrant list to begin with, you're engaging them in a meaningful way. And then when the time comes for them to be there, they'll be there. If you don't, they're not.
So what are some of the more innovative, or maybe not even, don't have to be innovative, or maybe sustainable ways that you've seen campaigns, organizations, individuals send out regular messages? For instance, is it, I don't know, maybe you're a local church and you're using this to engage your community, and you have like the pastoral staff has a potluck, and you send a picture of the pastoral staff and, say, really excited about what's ahead for the church, or what are the kind of things that people are doing to do this that you think have been innovative or really smart, or have kept them regularly engaging with people?
Yeah, that's great. We have a very rural client that loves to send out. She's well known for her recipes, her cornbread, pecan pies. So she launched an entire campaign around get her get and share recipes and ideas like that, which is kind of funny, but it works for that community. So it's really, they're connecting around a common love that they have for cooking and community, and then they're slipping in the conversation around action and activism and banding together and showing up at the fundraising drive and the bake sales. Those kinds of things become easier and easier for them to do because it fits and it works for that community. And it's, obviously doesn't work everywhere. We've seen prayer chains and messages. You mentioned pastors, so we've seen churches leverage texting to stay connected to communities, and particularly thought leaders in the space where you want to know what they're thinking about a particular topic, or you want to be on the prayer, the prayer lists, or whatever that might look like. So I think it really just comes down to finding your voice and then being consistent with that and being authentic in as much as you can, and then sharing around that. We've seen range days hosted at the shooting clubs. We've seen galas packed out around themes. We've seen theme park takeover days where they're going to go down to Disney and take it over and don't miss out. And we're going to be over here. Now we're over there. So there's different things like that you can do depending on your audience and your end game to drive relationship. And remember, people just want to belong and be part of something. So they're looking for community anyway. So, yeah.
Yeah. And that's great. I think you really are touching on, I think, something we've talked about earlier in the show that just is missing out there is really a connection.
Yeah.
And it's not just, oh, hey, I write a check every once in a while, or I click on a website and give every once in a while. I'm actually a part of something.
Mm-hmm.
And it makes gifts that are more likely to happen on the campaign side of things. Could be having people volunteer more, or some of the other things that might have around these as well. And I think, and would you say is one of the important things here, not every text message be about fundraising necessarily?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think the messages in between need to be useful and beneficial. Here's what's happening in Congress. Here's what we're working on. Here's what's happening at the city council this weekend. Here's where you can access the minute. I mean, I lived in San Diego a long time before I realized, how to find out what was going on with my local government. I had to go searching through a bunch of government websites to figure that out. I mean, that's painful. So to get on a list of a meaningful candidate, and what I ended up doing is just finding a candidate that I liked and then signing up, and then figured, hey, he'll keep me abreast of what's going on. And he did somewhat, but yeah, I think that's a powerful opportunity to build that community.
Well, that's something we're working on right now. Is we really think that mayors, county commissioners, you name it, or even just city governments, having people within a texting, community and getting regular updates. Like if you want to just know when to do yard debris pickup, or a lot of communities will have, free drop off in May, and, for yard debris, things like that, that's of use to the community, and being able to have the mayor send that out to people. One, it's good politics. You're being helpful, and you actually get to have that connection with people that, most mayors, most city councils, they only know about the 20 people who show up at every single town hall meeting, or the same people every single week. Those are the only people they ever hear from. And this is a way you could actually have a real relationship with a lot more people in your community and actually be a little bit more connected to what's going on out there. So it's what you experienced in San Diego is not unusual. That's how it is across most of the country.
Yeah. And Dustin, what I've always enjoyed about our conversations with both you and Sean is we talk more about strategy and vision, and tactics and tools take a distant third seat. If you have a strong vision for a candidate and a platform, and you have an idea of what the city should do, and you have a plan to get that done, and strategy of course, includes communication strategies, right? So then you implement, then you look and survey the landscape and say, hey, what communication platform or tool best helps me accomplish this objective? And back to my integration work, it does of no value if I simply implement a system without regard to strategy, and better yet, vision. So I've really enjoyed that part about our conversations for sure.
Well, thank you very much. And we're as we're beginning to wrap here, and what are the last like few things that you really want people to know? We're talking to. By the way, I think this is probably the first conversation specifically about fundraising through texting for the political space that's happened out there. I've not seen it anywhere else.
Mhm.
Maybe you've had these conversations
Mhm.
with people out there in public a lot, but we have not seen too much of it. So this is really an opportunity to speak to political leaders about how to share their vision with their community, create those connections. What do you want them to know about this?
Yeah, no, great question. Rally Corp was birthed in part because of what you just highlighted, Dustin. We just didn't see it.
Mhm.
We attempted the conversation with a couple of different platforms. We just weren't seeing the education and the training and the strategy, and the conversation was more around delivering messages by how big the message could be, and not why do it in the first place. So I would just invite the candidates to enter into that conversation with their consultants and advisors, and to, Rally Corp is of course available to assist with that. We offer, as you mentioned earlier, free training and resources. We get together every Friday. We call it Text Gen Together, but every Friday we get together
Cool.
for an hour. And so, we love these conversations and want to keep having them with the teams to make it happen.
Cool. And how can people connect with you? For the podcasters out there, we have your contact information. We'll make sure we mention it at the end of the show. We'll go through all that. But are there any other calls to action that you'd like people to take?
Yeah, if you text James to 24365, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, you'll get a copy of my business card that includes my cell phone and my office line. I'm extremely accessible. Rallycorp.com is our website. So stop by there. There's a calendaring tool where you can book a time, and we can do a deeper dive.
Very good.
Yeah. Well, James, I really appreciate what you shared today. I think this is so critical for campaigns to get that there is um, that a lot of what we do is one-way communication with voters.
Mhm.
It really is, and so here is an opportunity to actually have a two-way street on with voters, but and then also and more importantly on the donor side of things, to actually cultivate these people in a way that can be done on a little more of a mass scale. So
Yeah.
that as your organization's growing, this is a way for you to be in contact with them one way. That you're not writing the message each time and doing those things. It really makes a difference for you. And then um, but also building those relationships so that you can have some recurring donations come in, and it actually doing this well takes some of the pressure off of you.
Mhm.
Mhm.
um, then what else needs to be done? As far as we tell candidates they got to spend 75% of the time raising money. uh, Employing this is a tactic, not the only thing you do.
Mhm.
um,
Correct.
and I don't think that you would suggest that for your clients, like this is the only
Mhm.
thing you need to do to be in touch with them. So
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's a multi-pronged approach, isn't it? Strategy.
yeah, absolutely. And so, but I really think what you guys have done, and really your approach to this, is spot on, and it's what the marketplace needed and needs. So this is really
I appreciate hearing
this is
that.
really
Thank you.
great. So
Yeah, and the
Mm.
political sphere in particular needs us. Well, James, thank you so much for joining us today. People can go to rallycorp.com to check it out. We can't wait to have more people talking to you about politics and how politics can use fundraising, texting to really grow their movement. And really appreciate all of the insights today. It was really great. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Thank you both.
all
All
right,
right,
thanks,
on with
Jim.
the show.
All right. Thank you.
Well, that was a heck of a lot of fun and a lot of great insights. And we really do appreciate James Martin of Rally Corp joining us today, the growth executive. And really do appreciate him joining the show for this conversation. So, Sean, any initial thoughts that you have that you really think that we need to make sure that our candidates really do need to take away from all this?
Well, first, I want to say, yes, we are trailblazers. I think I haven't seen anything else with this conversation being had out there. So let's go ahead and take a little credit for that. And then, but, really just getting this idea of being connected with whoever you're communicating with, be it voters, be it donors. I was thinking about this for conventions that are coming up. You're talking a pretty small group of folks, but if you can really be engaged with them this way, it's a game changer.
Can you imagine if we were using this in the 2016 convention when we were doing the program, and engaging with the different speeches and all the different people that we had, in the run up to then candidate Trump's speech? That would have been just remarkable to have that kind of interaction with people. There's a lot of great. The digital team was there and they were great, but this would have been one next step. And as you know, whenever you have that many people together, regular digital communications doesn't get to people's phones.
That's right.
Whereas texting does. That usually will break through. So it is a different tool that could really make a difference whenever you have a lot of people together. Or when we were doing the inauguration, that would have been a pretty remarkable thing to use in that instance as well.
Yeah. Well, I think particularly, thinking about the convention, and being able to be in communication. People could have been very excited about what was. They were already excited, but could have really been electric, letting them know what's coming up, what they could really be on the forefront of that, and get what mattered to those on the floor to go for when they were going home.
Absolutely. Well, so people know, James Martin, CEO and founder of Rally Corp, for fundraising texting. You can get them at text James to 24365 to get his V card and to be able to contact with them. Go to rallycorp.com. It's James at rallycorp.com. But really an excellent guest today, and an opportunity for you to really be on the cutting edge of politics by using this to really further your vision. I really appreciated that he pointed out that really the vision is the source of your strategy. The tactics, the Republican Party in particular gets caught up in tactics, like what's the next tactic, and it really is missing the boat. Ultimately, you have to have a connection with your voters, with your volunteers, with your donors, and the tactics are going to change over time. What's going to make sense at any given time? We were talking about, I can't even remember what platforms 10 years ago that don't even exist anymore. So it's always about that connection. And that, to give President Obama credit, everyone said that he was the real social media trailblazer, but it wasn't that. It was that his message really connected with a group of people who are willing to use all those tools that were coming about at that time. It was really about his connection with people that actually was then able to use those tools. So that's the key here. This connection and the relationship is really the important part.
Yeah. Well, and being driven by a vision is so critical, because it's not only important for the campaign itself, but it also helps in governing. So actually having a crystallized vision and something you've created and jointly created with people makes such a big difference. And in case you want to know what it looks like to hold office without a vision, I would just point you to the current occupant of the White House. There is no vision, and so they're kind of just up there, and they're doing things, but there doesn't seem to be a driving force behind it. So.
Yeah, and there's the clip in the last day of Ducey and Psaki having the conversation, going back and forth, and it's obvious that everybody in the room knows that she just doesn't want to acknowledge that they have a crisis at the border and there's a real problem there. And really there's nothing to say. And it's because they don't seem to have an idea of what the end game is for all of this. Well, to move on from that, if you'd like to join our texting community, if you'd like to be able to be in communication with us, actually have these kind of conversations like we just showed during the show, that you text us a question during the show, we're going to bring it into the conversation. And if you text us and later this afternoon about your thoughts on something, you might be on a phone call with me or Sean not too long after that. So thank you very much for all of you who have texted to 202-918-3345. Again, that's 202-918-3345. Please do text that and join our community. You can also go to our website. It's politicaltradesecrets.com. You can join us there to become a Political Trade Secrets Insider. You'll sign up. We'll also be able to send you some exclusive stuff throughout the weeks and months. So please do go check that out. And then, Sean, how else can people make sure that they are the powerful political leader that their community needs?
Great. Are you thinking about running for office, or as Dustin mentioned, looking at how you can best be a powerful political leader in your neck of the woods? Reach out to us at olsonstrategies.com, OLSON strategies.com. You can email me at Sean, SEAN, at olsonstrategies.com, or Dustin at olsonstrategies.com. We'd love to have a conversation with you about that, about running for office, about what it takes to be a powerful political leader, or if you're interested in our intern and fellowship program as well, reach out to us and we'll set up that conversation additionally. So we'd love to have those conversations with you. And then we're proud to be sponsored by Grassfire. What do? They take care of all of the human-to-human conversations that happen in a campaign, where on the doorstep, in front of the grocery store, or over the phone, canvassing, petitioning, live calling. It's www.grassfire.us. You get one shot to make a first impression. Make it count. Nobody does it better than Grassfire. And then they also fuel 10centtexting.com. This is your political texting, includes an image, GIF, short video right there in the body of the text message. It is truly remarkable. It is another way to actually have connection and meaningful connection with voters. It's 10centtexting.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. And thank you to all those who are part of the Share Force. It's as simple as you can text us to join the Share Force, or you can just share the program. And over 100 shares today just on Facebook alone. Thank you very much to everybody who is willing to share the program, because who knows what citizen out there that you're going to inspire to be the most effective citizen that can be possible, or empower them to be a powerful political leader, somebody who's going to step up, show up, and speak up in their community, to lead the community and really make a difference. And what we really care about here is to reignite American patriotism. So thank you to everybody for taking that action today. It really does help. Who knows who you're going to inspire. So thank you very much for doing that. And with that, Sean, any wrap up the show today?
Yeah, well, really appreciate all the great comments and text and all the other things that we got today. So thank you all for that. Really appreciate you being part of the show. And to those listening out there, this really is a great episode to really deepen those connections with your donors, with voters, and depending on the race, really make a difference for you. So glad to be a part of it. Dustin, thanks for setting it up. It was really a great show, and thought it was just a wonderful conversation.
Excellent. Well, we welcome everybody to join us again tomorrow at 11 a.m. Eastern time. We're actually going to be talking about ranked choice voting, which there's proponents and there's opponents of that. And we'll take a look at it as best as we can from a place of, considering both sides, though I think we already have a strong opinion about it. So we'll do our best.
Yeah, we're going to do the best to answer the question, does this make politics cleaner and nicer and so much better, or is it really a way that takes away transparency and one person, one vote? and some of the ideas that have been cherished for many years. So
yeah,
it's
ultimately in what we talk about, from a game design perspective. If you change the rules of the game, you change the play of the game, and you change the outcome of the game, and that's ultimately what. If people want to move to ranked choice voting, the problem is if elections are changed to that without really having the buy-in of the electorate, that doesn't work. And that has happened in a few places. A number of conventions have been moving to that, like actual political conventions, and it really does change the outcome. So you change the rules, you change the outcome, you change the play of the game, and it's going to have a lot of unintended consequences that people aren't aware of. So we're going to explore that, look at how that might impact your campaign and how your strategy would have to change if the game does change. So, that's going to be interesting. We'll do our best to try to look at it from both perspectives. I, for one, am not a big fan of it, but I'm also open to seeing what benefits there are. And there might be certain kinds of elections where it does make sense. So we will take a look at that. And with that, Sean, thank you very much for all the great insights today and the great questions. Thank you to James Martin for joining us today. Really do appreciate it, and really encourage people to go to rallycorp.com and check them out. And with that, this has been another episode of Political Trade Secrets.
Join us next time by subscribing on iTunes and get show notes and sign up for our newsletter at politicaltradesecrets.com.